Johnny Whitaker was born on December 13th, 1959, in Van Nuys, California. And from a remarkably young age, it was clear he possessed something rare. There was an emotional openness about him that reached beyond performance and felt genuinely human. Long before he understood cameras or scripts, Johnny had a natural ability to connect with people, an authenticity that made audiences feel safe and seen. By the age of 3, he was already appearing in television commercials, not as a novelty, but as a child who seemed instinctively comfortable expressing emotion. Casting directors noticed that he didn't act cute, he simply was. That sincerity became the foundation of his career and would later define why his performances lingered so powerfully with viewers. Even as a small child navigating an adult industry, Johnny carried himself with sensitivity and awareness beyond his years. It wasn't polish that set him apart, but honesty, and in an era hungry for warmth. America responded to him instantly. Family Affair and America's emotional adoption. Johnny Whitaker's life changed forever in 1966 when he was cast as Jody Davis on the CBS sitcom Family Affair. The show centered on 3 orphaned children sent to live with their bachelor uncle, Bill Davis, played by Brian Keith. Johnny was only 7 years old when filming began, yet his portrayal of Jody carried emotional depth that felt strikingly real. Week after week, audiences watched him navigate loss, adjustment, and love with a vulnerability that resonated across generations. Family Affair quickly became a massive success, running for 5 seasons and embedding itself into the cultural fabric of the late 1960s. Whitaker's chemistry with his co-stars, especially Brian Keith, gave the show its emotional spine. Their on-screen bond felt lived in, not performed. Viewers didn't just watch Jody grow up, they felt protective of him. Johnny became one of the most recognizable child actors of his era, admired not only for talent, but for professionalism and emotional intelligence that far exceeded expectations. Brian Keith. A presence beyond the camera, behind the scenes of Family Affair, Brian Keith became far more than a co-star to Johnny Whitaker. At a time when Johnny was surrounded by adults, pressure, and long workdays, Keith offered something grounding: consistency. Years later, Whitaker described Keith as a second father figure, someone who quietly looked out for him without spectacle or sentimentality. Keith was known for his gruff demeanor, but Johnny saw the care beneath it. He recalled how Keith would explain scenes, encourage him to understand emotions rather than simply recite lines, and remind him that truth mattered more than perfection. "Don't just say the words, believe them," Keith once told him, advice that stayed with Johnny for life. While Keith could be intimidating, there was never cruelty in his guidance. Johnny felt protected, not controlled. In an industry where child actors were often treated as commodities, Brian Keith treated him like a person, and that distinction made all the difference. Growing up under fame's weight. As Family Affair soared, so did Johnny Whitaker's fame. While success brought opportunity, it also came with expectations that few children are equipped to carry. Johnny was praised for his maturity, yet that maturity was often a survival skill rather than a choice. When the series ended in 1971, he was suddenly expected to redefine himself. No longer America's little Jody, but not yet fully an adult. He transitioned into film with impressive performances, including The Biscuit Eater, where he carried an emotionally demanding story with quiet strength. Soon after, he starred as Tom Sawyer in the 1973 musical adaptation, bringing charm and energy to a classic role. Still, the shift from child star to young adult was disorienting. The structure that once protected him faded, and the industry that once embraced him became less forgiving. Johnny began searching for identity beyond applause, navigating a space where fame no longer offered direction or stability. Love, marriage, and a search for normalcy. In 1984, Johnny Whitaker married Simria Wright during a period marked by transition and uncertainty. She was not part of the entertainment world, and that distance from Hollywood initially offered Johnny a sense of grounding. The marriage represented hope, a chance at stability, privacy, and emotional refuge after years in the public eye. Johnny was trying to redefine himself, to build a life not anchored to childhood fame. However, personal struggles and unresolved pressures followed him into adulthood. Like many young marriages formed under emotional strain, theirs faced challenges that neither was fully prepared to manage. Over time, differences grew, compounded by Johnny's internal battles and uncertainty about his future. By 1988, the marriage ended in divorce. Though painful, the experience became a turning point. Johnny later reflected that the loss forced him to confront parts of himself he could no longer avoid. It marked the end of one chapter, but quietly opened the door to personal reckoning and eventual healing. Falling away and finding a way back. After his divorce, Johnny Whitaker entered one of the most difficult periods of his life. With fame behind him and direction unclear, he struggled deeply, drifting away from acting and battling personal challenges that left him disconnected from the person he once was. It was a painful descent, marked by isolation and self-doubt. Yet within that darkness came a slow, deliberate awakening. Over time, Johnny found sobriety and spiritual renewal, choosing not only recovery, but purpose. He dedicated himself to helping others facing similar struggles, using his experiences as tools for compassion rather than shame. The boy once watched by millions became a man focused on service, humility, and honesty. Fame no longer defined him. Integrity did. This transformation didn't erase his past, it reframed it. Johnny came to understand that survival itself was an accomplishment. His journey became proof that redemption isn't loud or cinematic, but quiet, intentional, and deeply human. Returning to creativity on his own terms. Years later, Johnny Whitaker returned to creative work, not out of necessity, but choice. In 2012, he co-hosted the Dr. Zod and Johnny Show, a radio program that blended humor, reflection, and candid conversation. The format allowed him to connect authentically, without the constraints of image or expectation. Listeners heard not a former child star, but a thoughtful, grounded man with perspective earned through experience. In 2013, he stepped onto the stage in a production of To Kill a Mockingbird, portraying Judge Taylor with quiet authority. The role, though small, symbolized something meaningful, a return to craft. Then in 2016, he appeared in Amazon's reboot of Sigmund and the Sea Monsters, offering a nostalgic nod to his roots. These moments weren't attempts at revival, they were expressions of joy. Johnny wasn't reclaiming fame, he was honoring creativity on his own terms. Speaking honestly about Brian Keith. At 65, Johnny Whitaker chose to speak more openly about Brian Keith, not to sensationalize, but to honor complexity. He described Keith as strong, complicated, and deeply human, a man who carried private pain while showing up fully for others. Johnny acknowledged that Keith could be intimidating, his presence commanding, but never doubted his care. He spoke of phone calls after family affair ended, moments when Keith checked in quietly, concerned about Johnny's well-being. When Keith died in 1997, the loss hit hard. Johnny said it felt like losing family, reopening a child's grief with adult understanding. He reflected on Keith's struggles with compassion, recognizing that strength often hides wounds. People forget that strong men can be hurting, he said. By sharing these truths, Johnny wasn't revising history. He was completing it. He wanted fans to remember Brian Keith, not just as an actor, but as a man who mattered. Gratitude, legacy, and quiet truths. Looking back, Johnny Whitaker speaks not with bitterness, but gratitude. Family Affair gave him more than a career. It gave him lessons, relationships, and a blueprint for authenticity. Brian Keith's influence remains with him, shaping how he understands professionalism, masculinity, and care. Johnny often reflects that he never fully expressed his gratitude while Keith was alive. A regret softened by the knowledge that love was shown through actions. Today, Johnny honors Keith by living honestly, helping others, and valuing truth over image. He understands now that childhood fame was only one chapter of a much larger story. At 65, his voice carries calm clarity, not nostalgia for what was lost, but appreciation for what endured. By finally telling his truth, Johnny Whitaker reminds us that behind television's golden glow were real people, real bonds, and quiet acts of kindness that mattered more than ratings. And that, ultimately, is the legacy worth remembering.